Okay, Dr. Pete here with Comfortable Universe, the song of everything. I'm going to refer you to my blog, pjwetzel.com, songs 28 specifically, and then song 29, which will be an extension of this discussion into the wider realm of the entire universe. But we're focusing on just our planetary system and how life formed here on Earth during the extremely early stages when the proto-planetary disk that was creating the sun and all the planets was still consolidating, was still just a really chaotic mess full of asteroids and rocks and comets and meteors and big and little colliding with each other and colliding with Earth. I mean, you just look at particularly the backside of the moon and see all the craters, and even on Mars, and just there's been so many collisions, so many impacts. These asteroids, these rocks, were the great gardeners of the early planet Earth. There was major bombardment of asteroids during the first, up until about 3.8 billion years ago, when what they call the late heavy bombardment ended. That's about when things started to sort of calm down. But before that, every square inch of square mile of Earth was being remixed and stirred. The great gardeners of the cosmos, the other rocks in our protoplanetary disk, were keeping our Earth well stirred and mixed, and just all the chemicals, and they were bringing the chemicals for life. Let me pause and just refer you to a Nova Science video that they produced and published in January of 2026 called Asteroids, Sparks of Life? ? And there they discuss some of the new research that basically posits that probably the most likely way that life could have formed was each one of these asteroids comes plunging into the Earth, which was probably covered with water, probably no land masses at all at that point, and it was just deeply stirring all that water, mixing it with its chemicals that it brought with it and with the chemicals that were already there, and mixing chemicals over and over and over in experiments that were repeated all across the 194 million square mile laboratory that was the surface of the Earth, happening for millions of years. Now, I started out back a few videos ago asking, what are the bets you're going to place? What are the chances that one of those simple experiments where you just mix chemicals in a hot, stirred up mess of all kinds of chemicals for millions of years, what are the chances that life couldn't form? I can't see it even being remotely possible. Life is just not that complicated, and the point there is that it has so many different ways of metabolizing in our current experience, in our current world. Life is extremely easy. It's almost like, in my blog I use the analogy, I refer to it as being just maybe a little bit more sophisticated version of fire. That's really all it is finding a way to extract energy from the environment, burn it, and self-maintain, and then self-reproduce. I don't think it's all that hard. And so, during this Hadean Epoch, when the bazillions of rocks were colliding on Earth, gardening the entire Earth into a continuously well-tilled soil, creating and executing experiment after experiment with each one of these asteroids dropping in, producing hydrothermal vents, stirring up, creating heat, bringing in the ingredients for life and stirring them up with the water into hydrothermal vents. Chances are, this research that I pointed out that was discussed in the NOVA PBS video, chances are that's just the most likely, the most probable, because it's the most common environment in the extremely early Earth. Life loved that mixing, that stirring, the constant natural process of bringing it food. It didn't have to work very hard to find its sources of energy and its sources of raw materials. So life formed probably really quick. The Hadean, with the water being already in place on the planet, started 4.4 billion years ago. We had Luca 4.2 billion years ago. I'd be willing to bet that some life was already there just a few, maybe million, maybe tens of million years after the Earth became habitable. It's all highly speculative. I'm not, we're going to place bets on that. Bets on how long after habitability is established that life becomes apparent. That's another bet. We don't have to bet on that. We're going to move on in the coming discussions to how essentially the same whole story is repeated at the beginning of the universe. And it's even more astounding. Universal habitability did happen. And the entire freaking universe, which is at the time of, we're going to get ahead of ourselves, but at the time of the formation of the first stars, it was already millions, even maybe a billion or more light years across. This is a vast laboratory, a vast space in which to produce, one oddball event, mixing of the right chemicals together and allowing them to create a self-supporting, self-sustaining, and then self-replicating entity. The story goes on, but that's the idea. Life could be everywhere in the whole universe, and then that addresses the question that I haven't, and I don't even, our Song of Everything doesn't even need to explore or discuss this possibility of panspermia, the transfer of life from one planetary body to another. There's already been discussion, did life maybe first form on Mars and then Earth got seeded as Mars was more habitable maybe earlier because it was farther out? It's a plausible argument. But we don't need to have that. We're just going to look at how life forms, and if it's so easy to form, you hardly need panspermia. You hardly need the ability of a life form to travel interstellar space on rocks, deep inside of rocks that get hurled out of the planet when it gets clobbered by an asteroid. But that's possible too. Life maybe didn't even have to form on Earth. And that just sort of multiplies the probability, makes my bet a little bit more of a sure bet. Life is everywhere. The Song of Everything claims uncontrovertibly, life is everywhere. There it is. Look. All right. Enough for today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.